How's it going, everyone? My name is McKeller, driven by Faith Ministries. This is my co-host, Cameron Moore. This is our first podcast out on this platform, actually since a while. I've been posting episodes in the past, but kicking it off with this episode, I want to introduce Cameron as well. He'll be on a lot of these moving forward, especially with our student athletes we'll be having come on and talk about their journeys with their faith and everything. So Cameron, just kind of give maybe a background on what you did in high school and then kind of going into college athletic wise.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Cameron here. So I was a cross country and track athlete. So I kind of got into that in middle school. I wanted to do soccer for a while, but then had my soccer coach tell me that I was a very gifted runner, and so he told me to just pursue cross country. And so I quickly found my passion and love for running. But I was also kind of a little bit involved in leadership kind of stuff. So going to a church and kind of being involved, doing a little bit of the youth, but it wasn't ever really my thing. So I kind of turned that energy to running and to leading my squad. So like when I was in junior year is when I started to become one of the faster guys on the squad. Eventually, like in cross country, you basically have JV and varsity. Varsity is going to be top 7, so I ended up being going from number 7 sophomore year to number 1 junior year, and so that kind of put a lot of my mind on leadership and what it means to truly lead a team, but it never really translated. I kind of became arrogant, and my senior year didn't do super hot, and so I kind of wish that I had something that taught me a little bit more about being humble, giving up that, what would you say,
just kind of giving up that pride,
Yeah, exactly.
And feeling like, maybe you're on top of the world with your athletics, but, wrapped up in that identity instead of who kind of God calls you to be.
100%, and that kind of translated to when I went to college, and I think I still felt some deep belonging, and knowing that I needed a relationship with the Lord. So that led me to signing an offer at Trevecca Nazarene University. So freshman year was kind of like a big step into doing stuff on my own. I was still 30 minutes away from home, so I could still go there on the weekends, and I did. But that was kind of like a test or a step out into faith, say, okay, well, where am I at, Lord? Where's our relationship going? And it went really well in the very beginning. But you're in college, you're a freshman, there's a lot of pressure to do really well, but there's also the external factors. Doesn't matter what university you go to, whether it's Liberty University, Trevecca Nazarene, different Christian universities, those same temptations are there, no matter where you are. So I kind of dipped my toes into that stuff a little bit, and so that kind of rocked the faith a little bit. And so, I think, again, if I had the principles and I had the teachings to really get behind my faith, really get behind reading the Word and understanding it, interpreting it, and then actually applying it to my life, applying it to just the way I interact with people, would have set me up in a little bit better direction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what do you think, looking back at 17-year-old self on a varsity team, and I know a lot of the people and a lot of our listeners are, in those high school athletics right now, or maybe in college athletics. It's one thing to be a leader, but it's one thing to, lead by example as well. But, what's the one thing I guess you would tell yourself, 17-year-old, trying to be, of course, a star in athletics, but also, juggling, faith and, ego and identity?
Yeah, I would say for me, it was just kind of having the courage to do it. I think it does take a lot out of you to gather the courage to talk to your fellow classmates, teammates, go into those deeper conversations. It definitely takes that leap of faith.
Sure.
But I think if I were to look back on it, I needed someone to show me the way, show me the path. I don't learn to run fast without a coach. I don't learn to run more mileage without a coach. I don't learn to eat better and eat healthier without my parents or coach or dietitian, whatever. And so I needed to have someone that was in leadership to show me the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is the way I've always looked at it is athletes influence other athletes the most, right? You're going to look to your friends and your colleagues who are on your team who maybe are better than you in the sport or sometimes worse than you, and can compare yourself either way, right? And we always compare each other on an athletic basis, but what about from just a spiritual side of it? Hey, is this guy even talking about God? Does he have something about a Bible verse in his Instagram bio, but how's he really living it out, right? And that can kind of be hard, and that's exactly what this is all about. Driven by Faith Ministries is created so that if you're that high school athlete, you're juggling, whether you want to make sure you have that identity on your team of being, the top dog and stuff, or, being the best, but also, you're trying to say, oh, well, God says this, this is where you can step into that. We want to encourage you because student-led organization is the best. You're going to be able to talk to your friends. It's not from me or Cameron. You guys understand each other the most, and that's who the leadership and that's how it's created. Becomes right there. Kind of talk about when you went to college. I guess that transition of you don't have anybody walking and kind of holding your hand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing because I relied a lot of my knowledge and my teachings just on like real world, I would say, challenges or opportunities from my dad. My dad basically kind of held my hand through the hard times, through just prepping me for real life. And so going into college and trying to find my way was easy because I did have some pretty good teammates that were there to start a Bible group. I know we started a Bible study probably like the first week that I got on campus. And what was nice is that we were there before most of the other athletes, so we'd be there 2 weeks before athletes or even just normal people in the fall. So having that intentionality of, hey guys, we're gonna be getting into the Word, we're gonna be just kind of understanding it a little bit better, and I think that starts to establish like a deeper connection, not only with just your faith, but with also your teammates, because you have no idea until that teammate invites you to come to the Bible study or comes to a worship night, comes to a prayer night. Again, it's just that initial step forward.
Right. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy to think about all the moments, you read in the Bible of that faith in the unseen that kind of Cameron's talking about. It's like, yes, God, I can see the vision of what it may look like in the future, but, how do I get there, right? And it's just, it's taking down that guard, it's taking down that, ego of, maybe your friends do think you're the best, and maybe they know how you are as, your attitude and stuff, but just making that change, right? God wants to see you, become, this person who's also submitted to Him, but can, tell their teammates to, go and go try their hardest, go play their hardest, but also, revert it back to the Bible. And it's cool because Cameron, he kind of had a similar story to me, right? Like, I was in high school. I grew up, we moved around a bunch and never really got into a solid church. So it's like I didn't really have any kind of community, any kind of youth group or Bible study or anything. And so when I went to college, I actually went to a college. It was a top 10 party school in the U.S. for the past few years and everything. And so we had 25 bars on one street, right? And you go to, a Division I university and you are the top dog. I mean, people are looking at you to see, whether you like it or not, what you're doing. And you kind of get up in that, I guess you say that stream of just, having that ego and having that pride of, yes, I can do whatever I want because I am at the top of the food chain, right? And being, God blessing me with that opportunity, use it for his good, right? And every athlete listening to this in a high school right now, I mean, when you watch college football, college basketball, those guys who are at the highest stage after their games, when they say all glory to God and everything, in reality, we're not always going to get to that stage. I mean, the most, high school athletes, 2% go to the Division I, and then to go to the Power 4, Power 5, I mean, that's also, smaller than that. And so, what Driven by Faith does is, we want you to be able to, be outspoken about your faith. So it's having podcasts like this. It's having a post-game interview and, being able to outwardly say, yes, I believe in Jesus, and yes, that's cool, and yes, I can still go and, score 50 points on the basketball court and still come back and humble myself and say, I'm a Christian. I'm not going to, go and, freak out and say, hey, look at all these stats that I did. Look at all these offers I have now. It's, being a true Christ follower and being an athlete and being a leader, right? And we got, we got together and, kind of talked about what we wanted this podcast to look like. And, for the first episode coming out, and it's really just something of, what does it look like, beyond winning, like having that integrity, discipline and humility to, kind of, like we said, put yourself down where your God is above you, whether you like it or not, he is, and he's controlling every single step. It, reminds me of Proverbs 16:9, the heart of the man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. We can only do so much, right? We can go and practice our butts off every single day, 24 hours, and we can go and, get a lift in, get an extra lift in and stuff, and that's great. And look, it's good to keep in shape. It's good to work at your sport, but, there's always that one thing that stays above it. And that's something that when I was in high school, I wish I knew. But because I was, going through the motions, I was, trying to get the offers. I was trying to get the opportunities. And, once you get into college and you kind of settle into it 2 to 3 years down the road, you realize that, hey, this isn't the biggest thing ever. I'm more than just my sport, right? I don't know if you have anything to hit on that, Cameron.
Yeah, I think that's all really good. Like, we can all get tied up in talking about where's our next practice? Where's our next meet that we're going to run at? Where's, how's practice going to go? And all that. And the conversation really, I think, should come back to or be centered around Christ. Because we are nothing without him, with his sacrifice on the cross. And so many times, like what you're hitting on, that we could just be wrapped up in our 50-point game, or, I ran a sub 16-minute 5K. Like, we forget the person that put us there in the first place.
Right.
We forget the person that was there when we were running a 1958 5K. We forget the person that was helping us through our injuries, helping us through our hard times, helping us through the mental phases of improving and getting better at the sport, better at your craft. And so everything has to come back to him. And so the more that I think that you're in your word, or in the word, more that you're in your prayer time, the more that you get to connect with him, and more that you get to communicate. And it could be just as simple as, hey, God, I ran a terrible race. Like, I don't know what was going on, where even you were, and when I was, getting beat by my rival, and I tried so hard, but I couldn't get there. And, it's I think good to have those calluses, good to have those moments where you're doubting, where you're questioning. It just starts to strengthen that faith. It shows you that you can't do anything on your own strength, that you have to rely on the strength of Christ, and rely on the strength of the cross and what it did for you. So when you can go back and you can humble yourself and say, yes, I got that 50-point basketball game, but I couldn't do anything without Christ helping me. And you see that a lot with in the sport now, you see it a lot when you turn on the TV, you go on the NCAA football games, right? The championships. I think back to Ohio State when they won the national championship last year. Last year.
Yeah.
It was amazing seeing all of those guys, Travion Henderson and a couple others that were having these stand-out performance games. Like they're very, very dominant, but nothing compared to just their experience and their relationship with the Lord. And they say it every time on camera.
Yeah. And look, hey, that's exactly what this is going to be. So it's like, if seriously, if you want to be able to, outwardly say your faith, just reach out. That's why we're here, because this was not available for us. This is what we wanted, and so many other athletes that wanted it, reached out to us. It's like, hey, we want to be able to, pronounce our faith off the field after a big game or something, because we know that's the truth, right? It's not, about my stats. It's not about what I did. It's about what he did, right? Speaking of hard times, I don't want to be too sad or anything, but what's the hardest season I guess you had ever been in as an athlete, either high school or college?
Yeah, I would say this one's pretty easy for me, and gets pretty vulnerable. But when I was a sophomore in college, so this was during COVID, my sophomore season, I had dealt with injury in the fall semester, and at the same time was at the fastest that I had ever been. I had gone through a deviated septum surgery. I just couldn't breathe out of the left side of my nostril for almost most of my life. So I had a surgery, came back really, really strong, and was eating up the workouts, doing really, really well, getting nutrition down, and getting a good habit in studying, and doing well in my classes, and then something snapped, and I had gone through, or I had some pain in my knees, mainly because I was running 65 miles a week and in terrible shoes. But another part of it was just that I don't think I was in the gym enough, and all that. So it really affected me mentally, because I had poured my heart and soul into running, and that was my identity. That was something that, if that part of my life was starting to go wrong, then the whole thing unraveled. And again, that's where it's not necessarily about us. It's not necessarily about this big dream that we have to be the best athlete. We can't have that dream without the dreamer, the one that gives us those ideas, those dreams, those aspirations. Truly, he is the one that kind of plants those seeds there, and he starts to water the ground around it. Yeah. And so through that time, there was some prayer, but I definitely could have been a lot better. Definitely could have been reading a couple Proverbs or Psalms that definitely would have got me through those times. Yeah.
When you finally got that change of circumstances, I would say, how did you know that it was your faith bringing you through it, and not just something just clicking? When you finally went over that hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I went to see a physical therapist. He was apparently one of the best in Nashville. I went to the team doctors, went to my coach. I did all the things, so rehab, icing, stretching, doing squats in the gym because I had knee stuff going on. I did everything in my own will and own control, and it still wasn't the outcome that I wanted. I still wasn't as healthy as what I wanted to be. I wasn't as fast as I wanted to be. But something that thing was missing. Something, no matter how small or how big it was. And it was Christ. It was that relationship. I would always be questioning why this was going on. Never really sitting back and saying, wow, you gave me everything. You gave me this opportunity. You were the one that was weaving the web, that was guiding me on this path.
Yeah,
And so that reflection, realizing that I think really helped me in my faith, but also humbled me. Like I ended up quitting. I needed a break from college, from running. I needed some sort of anchoring in my faith, and it was truly humbling. But here's the thing: He was there all along, even at rock bottom. Like that's where he shines the brightest. Is when you're at rock bottom.
It's like sometimes he'll strip away, like you said, that identity of what you had to really bring out, take your armor off to really bring out, oh my gosh, this is all I have is you. This is all I have is God right now in this moment. And, the thing is, that's all we need, right? It's all we need is Him. One more question kind of on that topic. If someone is in kind of a season of losing or doubt right now, what's like the main thing you would kind of tell them first initial step of getting over that, whether it's community, finding somebody, that has been through it?
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to be able to see someone physically that is going through the same thing that you're going through, or has gone through the same thing that you're going through. We can be arbitrary here and say, well, you just got to be praying, got to be in your word, you got to be reading. But sometimes in our own understanding and our own strength, we can't comprehend it. It's hard for us, and I totally understand that. So that's where you can go to a teammate. That's where you can go to a coach. That's where you can go to someone that's been experienced in your field, that has gone through the same things. And I think community is definitely one of the biggest things. And having people who are like-minded in faith, that still believe that Christ can do miracles, that He can still work in your circumstances. So having a community that's centered around Christ, that believes in healings, believes that even when you have those shin splints, even when you have that meniscus tear, that like you can come back from it, that you, through the power of God, that you will come back. If it's in His will, it's in His way. And if it's in His way that you are going to come back and be better than ever, praising Him the whole time, then He'll make it happen. He'll make a way for it. So yeah, just that community, I think, is a big aspect.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, look, this is, I keep going back to the whole premise of this, but this is why, it's so important, right? Because you can get in those moments of just, as an athlete laying in the bed at night, just thinking, hey, what am I doing? Like, is this all worth it? Where are you at, God? And that's why it's so important to have those, those communities and those, while we have established, this Driven by Faith Ministries, these groups that, athletes will get together with their friends and, open up the Word and, ask those vulnerable questions and get into it deep, because, they're all going through the same thing. We're all going through the same thing as athletes. We've been through it. If you've seen it, you've done it. If you've done it, it's already been done, right? And, that's the cool thing is, like, it's God's established, these things that, I think sport is such a good way to, pronounce your faith. And, you have this, like I said, this stage, and it's different than anybody else. You're going out there and you're performing something with the body that God gave you. And, sometimes people don't realize that body that is not from yourself. He gave you that to, lead you in that sport that you're playing right now, that you can play it well. And, and if you're not playing it well right now, then He has you in another space that you need to be leading in, and that's something I had to realize in college. I played Division I athletics and did not play a lot. That was the thing. I went there and I expected to be playing all 4 years, every single tournament of the whole entire time. And I realized that God wanted me to be there. That was the vessel, to go establish something better, to go establish a group, to go establish a Bible study, create, that tight-knit area that, you can actually speak to your teammates. So if you're that athlete, that is right now, that's not starting, you're not playing right now, and you're watching your friends who are so much better than you in your eyes, you can still be a leader. There's no saying that there's nothing stopping you from going up and saying, hey guys, let's grab a pizza at my house every Tuesday night and let's just hop into John. Let's just hop into Proverbs. Let's just hop into the Word and let's see where it goes. And that's how you create a leadership right there. That's how you create that bond that's tighter than just going on the court and playing and coming off and going home. That's how my team, at least in college, and Cameron, can tell if it's what we needed in high school. It's what you need started there. So when you get to college, you already know how to establish it. Because when we both got to college, we got there and we established something not of God. We realized pretty quickly, hey, God, this is not where you want us to be. But where do I go from here, right? And this is exactly why this exists. One thing that I always think about, is like I was the quiet Christian, right? Like I had the Bible verse in my bio, but I didn't live it out at all. Have you ever tried to be the quiet Christian?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably super simple when you're at a Christian university to be the, say, non-extroverted Christian, because the assumption is, well, hey, we're at a Christian university. I think everyone should be Christian. Everyone believes in God. Everyone has some kind of a relationship. Everyone's going to church. Everyone's praying, but that is actually far from the case.
Yeah, no, seriously. That was definitely me, and it was opposite for me because I was not at a Christian university. I was at a very public and, if anything, not Christian, anti-Christian almost, in a lot of ways, kind of university. So it's tough because it's like, look, you may be at a private Christian school right now, and you're doing the daily Bible classes. You're in it, and you're like, well, yeah, obviously everyone's Christian, right? But then you see on their social media or you see on the field, they're not living it out, and you're wondering, why is this guy who gets so much playing time saying he's a Christian but not actually doing it, right? And that's where you can step in. That's that gap that you can fill. I was that quiet Christian in the sense that I was too scared and too nervous to outwardly show my faith. I thought that sometimes, being a Jesus follower sounded weird, and it would maybe make me a little lower. And, now we read the Bible and, you realize that we decrease, He increases. And so that's the way it's supposed to be. And it's not about us. And that was pretty tough. I had a pretty big ego. I wanted to be the guy that kind of walks around with the high chest and the accolades and the awards and everything. And that was tough. You have to kind of bring yourself down to a place where it's like, this isn't about me. I want to start this study. And it's not studying about me. It's studying about God. And we're all gonna find some kind of alignment here, and this is gonna build our team, and this is gonna build our group, so that when we're out at practice, when we're out on the court, the field, whatever, we can talk about things other than the game. What do you think? Just kind of looking back, have you ever, and when you were playing athletics and everything, was there any like certain prayer that you were always praying before you went out, and ran?
I think it's just simple as, Lord, give me the strength to do this.
Yeah.
You're my provider. You're my comforter. I think a lot of times, it was always, if it's in your will, it's in your way. If you have me performing really well, then by all means, let's rip it together. But always. And I think it's pride sometimes. It's like you always want to perform really well. I mean, obviously, that's why you're there. That's why you're in athletics, because you either love it or you're really good at it, right? I don't think many of us join this and we hate running. We hate playing basketball. We hate playing football, but we want to play it in college, right? So I think it was, is my love for this sport overtaking my relationship. So, I would always have the Lord check me of that as well, and just make sure that I was in the right mindset.
Yeah, for sure. I guess this is kind of a deeper question, but maybe kind of we had talked about earlier and stuff. But how would you define like success when you're not winning to an athlete?
I'd say success is. Success, I think, can look a couple different ways. A team sport doesn't mean that one person is excluded. It doesn't mean that 5 people that are hurt out of the 60-man roster that are not doing anything, that are not helping out, that are not I think it really comes back to a team aspect. And so, I think something that would be really amazing, really, really bold of you guys is, even if you're injured, you guys, I'm going to use cross country and track as an example. But if you go up to that number one runner that took your place because you're injured, why don't you pray for them? Why don't you pray that they have an amazing race? Pray that they don't suffer any injuries. If you got a team, and I think you're a true leader that inspires others, you're gonna rally around your guys and you're gonna pray for them. I think that's what we did. Every cross country meet was we would huddle around. Even if you were, there were a couple that were non-Christian, but it was kind of that camaraderie that we would band around as brothers, and we would pray for each other and pray that we find success in the day. And so I think that's huge, whether you're injured or whether you're as healthy as can be.
Yeah. I think I would be lying if I didn't say there was times where when you're getting played over, you're like, man, I hope that guy starts playing bad, and that's it's tough, right? You want to be the showstopper and stuff, and you've got this guy or this girl in your way, who's getting all the which you see like the worldly glory, which feels good. It feels really good. When you get praised, it feels really good. And I didn't realize that the only one who should be praised is God in that time, right? And I had to humble myself, and it's kind of what Cameron said. I had to find a place where the people who are playing over me, I hope they play better than they ever have. I hope they go out there and do it for the team. Who doesn't want their team to have success? And by me praying or praying on their downfall, I guess that's going to do the opposite, right? Then you're just taking down your team with you. You know what I'm saying? So I guess my next thing would just be what would it look like the difference from an athlete who maybe is that quiet Christian right now to making just like those daily changes. What's the daily changes you can make that not only shows up in your daily life just routine wise, but maybe your coaches and your teammates start to realize, oh wow, maybe this guy he or this girl really is taking a different kind of step on things.
Yeah, I think it can definitely come back to humbling yourself. In your prayer time, planning and strategizing with the Lord. I know that sounds kind of interesting in how that looks, but you're being vulnerable. You're saying, Lord, like I don't know where to go with this. Like I feel like I want to step out. I feel like I want to grow more with you, but that doesn't happen without talking to my fellow peers. And so you are one in conversation with the Lord on that, being open, being honest, and He will repay that tenfold. Again, in our own human understanding, it may look like that you go up to that teammate that you feel like is kind of on the edge, like you kind of see him at church sometimes, but you see him in the back, you see him not really raising his hands, and so you just walk over into him. At a little like after class, you guys are just chit chatting. And you're like, "Hey man, can I pray for you really quick? Like I feel like the Lord is speaking something over you." I think that goes a long way, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can say, "Lord, I just pray over Brooks. I pray that whatever he's dealing with in this day, I pray that it goes well. I pray that he has no mishaps on this next test. I pray that when he's at practice that he just feels the most rejuvenated he ever has." Simple things like that will go a long way, and so the Lord will meet you in those steps. And I think that's how you start to slowly turn the wheel, and you just start going up to even if it's none of your teammates, even if it's your cross country runner, you're going up to a football player. Like, step out. And even if you fall flat on your face, get made fun of, whatever, the Lord is right there with you. And that's the most important thing in the world. Not these worldly people that openly deny Christ, but like Brooks was saying, have a Bible verse in their bio. At the end of the day, it's about that relationship with him, that reliance on him, and he will be there every step of the way when you take that step out.
Yeah, and I can remember, in college and stuff, I was involved with an athletic ministry and everything, but I really wanted to, create a group on my team, and it was nervous. It was a nerve-wracking deal. Like, I didn't know how to do it, and the way I actually went about it, I just put everybody in a group chat and texted them and said, "Hey guys, Pizza Tuesday, let's start a Bible study." We had 10 guys on my team. I thought maybe 1 or 2 would show up, and I had 9 of them come. So it's just that deal where it's like, the Lord can move mountains. He can split seas. He can do whatever. Why wouldn't he start a Bible study? Why wouldn't he let you pray over somebody? He's going to. He's going to give you those opportunities. And once you step into that faith walk right there, you're going to get more opportunities. You're going to have times where people come up to you and say, "Hey man, I remember you prayed for me. Can you do it again? Because this happened." You know what I'm saying? And God works in just crazy ways, and he can work through us. And that's one thing that I just didn't realize when I was playing athletics. I thought that, maybe God was just, this up in the sky somewhere looking down on me, and he was dealing with other harder problems, right? But he cares about you. He really does, and he cares about the small things. He cares about you if you go out and you sprain your ankle in a game. It is. It's crazy, but this is the God who knitted you, before you even, you were even born, and he wants to have a relationship with you. And I didn't realize that relationship was, not just a one-time thing. It was a daily walk. It was opening up the Word every single day. If it's 5 minutes a day, spending time with him. You got to think about a relationship like, if we all love our moms and our dads, right? Like, we love our parents in some sense. You have to have a relationship with them. If you just told your mom one day, "Hey mom, I'm going to go away for 5 years," your guys' relationship would not be the same. It's the same deal with Jesus. If I just take him away from my life, he's probably not going to talk to me as much because we're not going back and forth. But if I have that conversation with him every single day and make him part of my routine, like when I'm scrolling on TikTok, I'm kidding, I don't scroll on TikTok, but we all have had those issues, right? Like, where we're just wrapped up in that kind of thing. One thing that I wanted to ask, Cameron, as well is I went through a lot of this and many, many times, but what's one thing that you do when you feel like spiritually dry? Like, if you've just I've exhorted everything, I've prayed the prayers, I've done all I can do, God, where are you at?
Yeah, I think when it comes to that spiritual dry season, and believe it or not, guys, I experience it a lot. There are many times where I feel like I'm on fire, and there are other times where you're kind of in that drought. And I think you have to come back and get into the Word. I don't think you can ever not soak up as much information as you can, and let the Lord lead you to wherever He wants you to read. And even if sometimes it means you're picking whatever, you're picking John, you're picking 1 Corinthians, you're picking Revelation. I think it's always good to come back and read the Word because it's living and it's active, and that's that time that you have with the Lord. Let the Holy Spirit guide you in that understanding of His Word, and I think that starts to slowly build that connection, build that relationship. That's what it always is that when we start to feel that dry season coming on, maybe that means we're not in our Word as much. Maybe we're not, and it's not just I'm praying 5 times a day. It's not that. I think it's really being intentional with your prayers. I think this can always come back to having a relationship with the Lord, and it could truly look like how Brooks and I would talk to each other, like, "Hey man, how's it going? How was your day? Like, how's Driven by Faith? Hey, did you go play tennis today? Did you go for your walk and get your 10,000 steps?" Yeah. It can, it's a relationship. It could be simple conversations like, "Oh, man, I tripped on that run and I wish I had, Lord, like, what was going on there?" or like, hey, I really wanted to say hi to that person that was walking by. Like I could feel something, and I didn't. Man, like, can we come back to that? Give it to me again. I want to see that next person. I want to say hi. I want to pray for them. It's gotta come back to connection. So kind of just to answer that question on the dryness is you gotta be in the Word. You gotta be stewing on it. You gotta be just in it every day.
Yep. Awesome. Well, man, that's good insight. Last question here, and this is something I'm always going to ask on all of our podcasts, especially with our up and coming athletes that we have scheduled out. What does it mean for you to be driven by faith?
Yeah. Such a hard question. I think it's just this longing for something deeper. I think a lot of athletes go through this where they see the height, they see the success, they see things going their way, and then just something snaps and everything crumbles. Their entire world feels like it's just completely shattered. And it only does that if there's no foundation. And I'm not talking about a worldly foundation. I'm talking about the eternal foundation. And that's through Jesus. That's through our relationship with the Lord. And so if that's not there, then nothing else will pan out. Everything, even if you get, we'll take an NFL player, even if they get to their dream school, they have a great career, they get to the NFL, and they hit all the awards and everything, but yet when they come home, they're retired at 40 years old, and they feel the most empty they've ever felt. It's because there's no foundation. If there's no relationship, then it's all meaningless. And so to be driven by faith is to be one with the Lord and one with a passion to see His kingdom come on this earth. And that can be as simple as what we're doing in connecting with student athletes and student athletes connecting with other student athletes.
Exactly.
To be driven that way is just our inspiration.
Awesome. Well, look, we really appreciate you guys. We appreciate all the athletes that watch this and everybody who wants to support us. If you would like to check out our resources online, you can go to drivenbyfaithministries.org. If you want to give to this is a ministry, this is a nonprofit, so everything that you do, giving wise, it strengthens our athletes. It gives them the resources. It gives them the ability to create groups and to be able to pronounce their faith publicly. So that's always much appreciated. And check out all of our social media as well. But we appreciate you guys. We thank you. God is good, and we will be back on the next episode with the next student athlete.